Delivery for the doctor.
Ah! It's the Kablam man! It's the what? The Kablam man!
You're just making sounds now.
Delivery fulfilled. And remember, if you want it, kablam it.
Kablam was written by Pete McTeer and directed by Jennifer Perot, and we will get to reviewing that episode in a minute. But first of all, I just want to talk about last week's episode very briefly, because I didn't do a full review last week. For personal reasons, I didn't do a review last week. If you want to know more about all that, you can. There's a video. There was the previous video to this. I'll probably put it up there or something. But I thought I'd give my views very quickly now on last week's, just in case I don't get around to doing... I don't know if I'll do a full review or not, but just in case I don't, this is roughly what I thought. I thought it was very good last week. I'm really liking the historicals that they've done this series. I hope they keep it up. And yeah, the historicals have been the outstanding pinnacle of this series so far. Rosa was amazing. And the Demons of Punjab was equally amazing. There was some great character stuff there. There was some great themes explored. I think, you know, Yaz had stuff to do, which was nice, as you'd expect. It was really sort of her episode. Her and Graham were the sort of two main companions that actually got stuff to do in this episode. Possibly slightly more than Graham than her, which is a bit odd. But she got stuff to do, so that was good. And generally, I really liked it. And I really liked the twist of the aliens not being the bad guys, and really the bad guys being the humans that do horrible things to one another for silly reasons. So yeah, I really liked last week's episode, and I would probably give it... I can't remember. I'm not sure if I prefer this to Rosa or not, and I can't even remember what it gave Rosa, but I think I would give this a 9. A 9 out of 10. But we're here to talk about Kablam, so let's do that. Let's talk about Kablam. And funnily enough, talking of humans being the bad guys, I like that they're exploring this, and this, I mean, I shouldn't have to say spoilers, I'm assuming you've seen the episode. I like the fact that they brought it in again here, because for most of this episode, I wasn't that impressed with it. I went into this episode thinking, oh, okay, it's going to be, like, before seeing it, I thought it's going to be some kind of, you know, commentary on Amazon and commentary on the working practices of big corporations and big warehouses and automation and how they treat their staff. And they were kind of slightly tackling that in the first bit of the episode, but I didn't think they were doing a particularly interesting job of tackling it. It was there, and it was sort of on a, you know, slight level, sort of just there, but it wasn't interesting. It was boring me in some parts when they were talking about that, and I was thinking that could be a really interesting way to go, but they didn't seem to be grasping it, and now I know why, because having seen the rest of the episode, and particularly the last 15 minutes, that was all a red herring. And yeah, for most of this episode I was a bit, it's going to be another meh episode, a bit like the Arachnids, currently my least favourite episode, the Arachnids one. I thought this might end up on par with that. But then, in the last 15 minutes or so, the whole episode turned around, and I was really impressed how they did that. Because often Doctor Who struggles with landing the endings of episodes. But here, I think they got the ending spot on. Sometimes with Doctor Who, they'll rush the ending. Sometimes it'll be a bit of a, oh yeah, just have to press this button and everything's fine again. And that's a bit tedious. But here, it had the emotional payoff. If anything, it did the opposite of what some Doctor Who endings usually do, because sometimes the ending kind of spoils what had been a good episode up until that point. This, I think, turned what had been a meh episode up until that point into actually a good even episode. The turning point was when we discovered that the bubble wrap was going to explode, and particularly when we saw Kira die. Now, Kira had been somebody that had been annoying me up to this point, and Well, just generally, her romantic subplot with Charlie, I'd been a bit like, this is very cheesy, and I'm not sure I like it. But having seen what comes later, all of that stuff with the romantic subplot paid off, and all the stuff that I'd previously been thinking throughout the episode, this is going to be something I mentioned as a low point, suddenly makes sense, and suddenly you got the emotional, you got to see Charlie react to seeing that she was about to pop the bubble wrap, and then we knew, like a scene later, we found out why he was so panicky, because not only did he see that she was in that room and confined, but he knew what was going to happen because he was the one that planned it all. And that was the turning point for me that turned it from a meh episode to, okay, now it's actually got me hooked. Now I'm actually interested. Now I'm engaged with the plot, because I hadn't been up until that point. I'd been a bit kind of just, it's on, I'm watching it, but not really engaged. Then I got engaged, and I loved the fact that they switched and did that whole... They basically red herringed us with the whole idea of it being an examination on working practices, and it was actually about a terrorist who had a cause, and that cause may well have been justified. No, that's the wrong word, not justified. The cause was right, may have been righteous, you know, fighting for workers' rights and all that, but the methodology he was using to advance that cause was despicable. And I like the way they played on that, because it kind of complements what they'd done earlier on in touching on the dodgy workers' rights aspect, and it kind of showed both sides of it. You know, yes, big corporations can be horrendous with their working practices sometimes, but equally, someone that wants to blow up a load of innocent people to challenge that is not in the right. And I like the way they kind of tackled that in the end. It was good. But that doesn't excuse everything that came earlier. There was a lot of stuff in the first 2/3 of the episode that I was a bit like, oh, okay, fine. Okay, first of all, how does a relatively local delivery Amazon-esque company that is, you know, biggest in this galaxy, as they say, somehow have the ability to deliver, bypassing the TARDIS's security, bypassing the shields, directly onto the TARDIS while it's in the time vortex? There was no indication that this civilization has time travel technology in the rest of the episode, so how was it able to do that? That straight away got me off on a bad start with this episode, because I was the logical... Yeah, it was just too much. Too much. So that started off bad. And in a lot of the early bits of the episode, I thought the scripting was a little bit stilted. It kind of felt not very realistic. What I like about Chibnall's script so far is that all the dialogue has felt very real. It's felt like real to real life and very gritty British drama-esque. Whereas the dialogue here was very much felt like staged, I'm saying a line type thing. And some of the Yaz's lines in particular felt a bit like that. And I don't know if that's maybe her delivery or the writing, but it just didn't quite click in some of the early dialogue. In terms of all the guest cast, I think they did an absolutely fine job. Probably the most standout was Julie. Julie playing Judy. Julie Hesmond, I could never pronounce her last name, Hesmond Haller as Judy Maddox. I thought she was really good. The person playing Charlie was really good as well. I thought he fitted that role, and I like the way that throughout most of the episode you think he's just this really goofy, lovable guy, and then that twist at the end, and he sort of turns a bit menacing, and I like the, you know, it felt like a realistic turn as well. It wasn't a mustache twirling turn. It was a I've been driven to this turn. So I like the way that those two aspects of his character that sort of played off against each other when you compare them. And most of the guest cast were just fine. I mean, Lee Mack was good, but he was Lee Mack, you know, pretty much the same as he is in most stuff. He wasn't bringing anything new to it particularly, but he played the role perfectly well, and, you know, Lee Mack as Lee Mack fitted that character absolutely fine. So that was all good too. One thing that has really annoyed me now, it's starting to really get on my nerves with this series now, is, and it started off as a positive, which doubly makes it annoying, is that the Doctor seems so flawed. And at the start of the series, I viewed this as a positive because I like the Doctor, and I've said this in a couple of the other reviews, I like the Doctor to have a few flaws here and there and to not get everything right all the time. But it's starting to get, they're overusing it and they're overplaying it way too much. So in this episode, there were some things where she goes, I got that wrong, I should have realised this, I should have realised that. And it's starting to get really annoying that she's doing this every single episode. And like I say, it started off as a positive because used infrequently, used, you know, once or twice a season, you know, I want to see the Doctor be fallible, but not constantly fallible, not constantly getting stuff wrong, and it kind of feels a bit like she is. I don't know, that might just be me. Let me know if you've noticed that too, or if you think I'm just being insane. Let me know. And another thing I do have to give to this episode as some praise right at the very end, it did make me cry. I literally did. Actual tears came out of my eyes at the very end when they're back on the TARDIS and they're talking about Lee Mack's character, and Yaz is saying about, you know, his daughter and the fact that she wanted to return the bracelet, I think it was, to her, and generally actually made me cry. So fair play, writers of this episode, you got me in the feels. And I mean, that, you know, generally ever since I became a father, that sort of stuff gets me a lot more. It probably doesn't get people that don't have kids as much, but if you've got kids, there's a chance that affected you. And maybe, who knows, maybe it affected me a bit more because of recent stuff I've gone through. But again, see previous video. But yeah, so I've got to give it praise for that as well. So that's my review. I think to round up, I would give that episode, see, it's still got a lot of flaws, but it kind of redeemed itself at the end. I don't know, maybe like a 7, I guess. It's, yeah, 7. Let's give it a 7. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel and do all that stuff, and maybe check out some of my other videos if you've got a moment. Here are 2 of them here for you to peruse. I will see you hopefully next week for another review, and bye.